Right, so I'm just going to go through how to create your own first-person controller, so you don't have to import the Unity standard assets. So your character is going to be a capsule, and the reason we use a capsule is because of the nice curved collider at the bottom. So if we used a box, it would have a straight edge, and if you go up like terrain or stairs or something like that, that edge might get caught. Whereas with a capsule, it will just smoothly traverse the terrain. Because we're going to utilize the Unity physics, we want to make sure that our scale is set straight away. So in Unity, one unit in Unity is a meter in real life. So if we import a cube, it's 1 unit by 1 unit, which is 1 meter by 1 meter. So we want to scale our character accordingly. So I'm just going to scale the collider and a human height like 1.8 meters. And we can turn off the mesh renderer if we want to. I'll just leave it on so we can see. The next thing we want to do is position our camera. Because it's first person, it's from the angle of the eyes, and at the minute our camera in the game view is just looking from the distance. So to do that, we child it to the capsule and then 0 its position. And what you want to do is make sure that the camera is facing your capsule's Z axis. So this blue arrow on your capsule, make sure your camera is facing that direction. Sometimes you might 0 it and it's facing that way. Just make sure that your rotation is 0'd in the inspector. So we want our character to move forwards, backwards, left and right. And the way we do that is through Playmaker and through the Unity Input Manager. So if you've never used the Input Manager before, you access it through Edit, Project Settings, and it's under the title Input. And you'll see these are all the default inputs. The ones we're going to use is horizontal and vertical. So horizontal will be moving on the X axis, and vertical will be the Z axis. So we've just got to change a couple of these values. So I'm just going to change that sensitivity to 1000 on horizontal, and vertical seems okay. So just copy these settings if yours are different to start off with. So we close that down and we're going to add an FSM to our capsule or our player, and we're going to call it input listener. And the reason for input listener is because the sole purpose of this FSM will be to listen out for those two axes, so the horizontal axis and the vertical one. When you type the names in to the axis name, make sure that they are exactly how they're displayed in the input manager. So if you're unsure, just copy and paste it because it is case sensitive. So we want to store those as global variables, so we'll make new ones for each. So we'll just call it vertical, and this one horizontal. Right, so that's that FSM done. We're going to create a new one on the same object, and this one's going to be called character movement. So to move my character, I'm just going to use translate. So we're going to translate our character on the Z axis. So we're going to use the vertical variable that we saved per second every frame, right? And we want to do the same, copy and paste, but this time we want to move it on the X axis, global variable, the horizontal, make sure that's set to none, and make sure the space is in self. Okay, one thing we need to do is, because we're using Unity physics, we need to add a rigid body to our character. Okay, so if we click play, we should be able to move. There you go, the character's moving. And to control the speed, if we wanted him to move faster or anything like that, if we go back into our input listener, you'll see a little variable, a parameter that we can change called the multiplier. So this should be double the speed from what it was. Yeah, there we go. So that is how to get your character moving forwards and backwards. Right, so now we want to make the camera move with mouse movement. So to do that, we're going to create a new FSM on our game object, our player, and we're going to call this FSM camera movement. And this state will only have, well, it'll have one action, but we're going to use it twice, and it's called mouse look. So if we add 2 of those to our state, you'll notice that mouse look uses the axes again, but it uses mouse X and mouse Y. So if we go into our project settings and our input manager, you'll notice that we don't have a mouse X or a mouse Y. So we're going to have to create our own. So if we change the size to 8, it adds a new one, it just copies the bottom one. So we'll rename it to mouse X. We don't need a negative button or a positive one. We'll set the gravity to 0, the sensitivity will set to 1, the type will be mouse movement, and the axes will be kept to X axis. So that's mouse X done. We now need mouse Y, so we'll add a new one, change the name, and everything's kept the same except for the axis, which will change to Y axis. So that's our input setup. In our first mouse look, this will control the mouse X only. We'll reduce the sensitivity because I think 15 is too high, and we want the mouse X to control the player. So as I look left and right, my player will rotate left and right. Whereas with this mouse look, which is the Y only, which is up and down, we want that to control the camera only. So as I look up, we don't want my character tilting and looking up. We just want the camera to look up and down. So we'll set that game object to the main camera. Another thing you might want to do is lock the cursor to the center of the screen. So to do that, add the set mouse cursor action, and we can lock it, and we can also hide it. So if I click play, we should be walking around and looking around how we want to. So there we go. It's a bit sensitive, so you might want to turn it down, tweak it to how you want it, but I am walking around and I'm using the mouse to control where I look.